With ongoing tensions between Canada and the United States, some local officials are worried about the security of our water supply. LaSalle's deputy mayor, Mike Akpata, wants to make sure Great Lakes water agreements are not violated. He plans to ask Essex County Council to take action on this when they meet tomorrow night. Mike Akpata joins us now in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Let's start with what your top concerns are about this.
Well, if we look at what the President of the United States said when he was campaigning, he said a number of things that people around the world kind of guffawed at and said, it's not going to happen. And then for me, this moment that I'm concerned about was he was speaking with Gavin Newsom during the fires in Los Angeles. And he said, and I'm going to mess up the quote, but he said, there's a big faucet up north. We just need to turn it on. That stuck with me. Then as he continued his campaigning, more things that were unbelievable came out of his mouth. Then he was elected. And he started to do them. So for me, the concern that I have is if you look at LaSalle and Amherstburg and all the municipalities that form the county of Essex, we abut Great Lakes water. We bring in Great Lakes water to water our plants, to water our crops, to water our families. And the number of agreements or standard political practices that have been tossed out by our friends to the south leads me to wonder if that faucet is going to be turned on and what repercussions it could have for Essex County and the municipalities in the county of Essex.
Is there any way to guess what that would look like, what the impact could be if these agreements were not honored?
Well, you know what? The funny thing is, unfortunately, from my perspective, no. I'm sure that there are some scientists and people at IRCA that would say what a drop of a foot of water would do to not only our economy, but our water sources and how we play and everything else. But the concern that I have is that we sign agreements with colleagues and friends every day. We sign agreements with other countries, and the expectation is that they be honored. And the expectation is that we can rely on the people that we used to call our best friend. And the demonstration of a lack of adherence to political norms is what concerns me. Because if this was 4 years ago, 3 years ago, to be sitting here and to go April 2nd, a second round of tariffs is going to hit us. And as I've heard, Windsor in Essex County is the third most area that's going to hit it. I wouldn't have believed it. Would I have believed that our friends may, because I don't know, not follow the agreements they've signed on the protection of Great Lakes water and how it's used? Absolutely not. But now the time has changed. The world has changed, and our relationship with our neighbor has changed. We have to be proactive and protect our natural resources and the water that keeps us alive.
You mentioned Glear, and it's worth noting that LaSalle is the site of the Freshwater Restoration Ecology Center, which is run by Glear at the University of Windsor. What have you heard about how the work there could be affected by the cuts in the U.S.?
Well, I haven't spoken with Dr. Pitcher, but I've got to believe this. With the work that he's done in restoration, tracking, wildlife, mitigation of invasive species, imagine if the water level was dropped on purpose by 6 inches. I've got to believe that there would be downstream, I say that respectfully, repercussions to the natural habitat and everything else that we do. So my concern is the change, not knowing what it may do, not knowing the environmental impact, not knowing the impact on people. But for Pete's sake, we'd signed agreements. We've got to believe that when you and I meet and we agree on a handshake or whatever we do, and we put our name and a stamp on a piece of paper that sets the course for countries, that we should follow them. And I wouldn't have believed this, but apparently now our border is just a mythical thing, and he's talking about moving the border. Everything I believe is on the table. We have to be prepared, and I'm not going to suggest that we don't have allies and friends in the United States. We have other countries that are supporting us internationally. We've got local municipalities in the United States that I've got to believe would be wondering what would happen if their water level was to drop 6 inches or to disappear. So I'm not going to suggest we're alone, but I think we need to raise not a Chicken Little, the sky is falling, but there's a pattern of behavior that we see, and we need to be aware that the impacts of one person's decision can affect not only the entire county, but this entire international region.
And what are you asking Essex County to do?
So I want to make sure that we contact both provincial, federal, and the Great Lakes agreements that we have to say we've agreed to them. They should stay. And the onus is on those who hold the agreements to make sure that they're followed. It is simply a confirmation that the paperwork that's been signed, the environmental work that's been done, the watershed care, and the belief that we have in water and water equity to be used in our region should stand.
Why is the water the issue of all the things Trump has talked about, the one that you're making sure moves forward?
It really struck me again during the fires when just how he said it. There's a great big faucet up there, and all we have to do is turn it on. And everything that the man has said, he has done. So when the faucet is turned on, and I walk to the Detroit River or Lake St. Clair, or if I could get on Lake Ontario or any place in our region, and I wonder what is happening to our water, where it's going, the privilege that I have of being on county council is that I'm allowed to raise issues that affect the livelihood and the lives of people in Essex County. And I believe water is a right, clean, sterile drinking water that we have, the water that we pull, the water that we play in, the water that waters our crops, the water that takes care of our animals. And just to say, are we sure that what we have signed is going to stay? Because right now, on April 2nd, our economic environment is going to change, and I don't want our physical or biological environment to change either.
Mike, I appreciate you coming in this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.